Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I associate myself with the remarks of the honourable gentleman from Aberdeenshire and Kincardine for the success of Aberdeen Football Club. The Strategic Defence Review makes it clear that housing must be a priority and the money from the sale of housing must be reinvested. But continually veterans come to me who've been discharged into homelessness. So can the Minister reassure us that it will be a vital part of making sure that houses which are sold or redeveloped are available to veterans' families?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm very pleased to offer that reassurance.
We come to Stephen Gafford.
Mr Speaker, and I'll join with colleagues in congratulating Aberdeen FC despite the impact that had on my own beloved Dundee United. But I'd also like to congratulate Arbroath, of course, for securing the Scottish League One Championship. The Scottish Government has reinstated the winter fuel payment for up to 88,000 pension-age veterans in Scotland. But the Prime Minister said it was right to slash the winter fuel payment. Was the Prime Minister right to slash it?
Mr Speaker, the member will be perfectly aware, as indeed everyone in the House will be, that questions about the winter fuel payment in Scotland are devolved to the Scottish Government. Decisions made in Scotland are therefore the responsibility of the Scottish Government. But I'm very pleased to reiterate to the House what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have said, that this was a difficult decision, and now that we have a little more breathing space, we are very pleased to be making changes to help more pensioners.
Stephen Gafford.
Speaker, well, I see that we're not going to get a straight answer out of the Minister any more than people in Hamilton got a straight answer out of their candidate, and that'll be why they're sinking without trace. So let me put it this way. Does the Minister think that the Prime Minister was right to have slashed the winter fuel payment from up to 1 million veterans across the UK?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, when this government took office, we inherited a £22 billion black hole that required emergency action to deal with. We said at the time it was a difficult decision we did not want to make, and now we're very pleased to be in a position where we can reconsider it.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, Scotland's universities are of course world class, but I'm very concerned about the financial difficulties being faced by several of them. Higher education, as you'll know, is a devolved matter, and Scotland's universities, their staff and their students all need a Scottish Government with a proper plan to turn this crisis around.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. International students are hugely valuable, not just through sharing of cultures and knowledge, but to our universities and the local economies around them. And in North East Fife in 2021-22, this was estimated at £159 million. What discussions has the Minister had with the Scottish Government about the economic impact of the reforms for international students in the Immigration White Paper? And can she update the House if indeed an economic impact assessment has taken place?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, we're in ongoing discussion with the Scottish Government and with Scottish universities, but I want to be absolutely definitive about this because there's been some confusion in the press. Education policy is devolved, and the international student levy will not apply in Scotland unless the Scottish Government decides to introduce it. I met with University Scotland just this week and made this point very clear, and I'm pleased to do so again today.
Mr Speaker, the university sector is important to grow the Scottish economy, but so is tourism too. And can the Secretary of State enlighten me on these jet safari trips taking place from Clacton to Scotland, allowing former bankers to patronise the locals, miss the big picture and be back in England in time for a pint of warm beer by lunchtime?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I think I did hear something about the member for Clacton getting lost in Hamilton this weekend, skulking behind the bins before he was sent packing by the good people of South Lanarkshire. Of course, the only local candidate in that by-election is Labour's Davy Russell, who stand up for his community against the division peddled by both the SNP and Reform.
Sir Desmond Swade.
Sir.
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, the honourable gentleman will have heard me remind the House on a number of occasions that it was John Swinney himself who said that education was the defining mission of his SNP government. Yet earlier this year we got the news that standards of attainment in Scotland schools are declining across the board, and shamefully outcomes for young working class kids are getting worse. The attainment gap is widening and the Scottish Government has failed a generation. They can't be allowed a third decade in power to continue that damage. Scotland's teachers, parents and pupils all deserve better standards in our schools.
Sir Desmond Swade.
It's caused that the system, which was once the benchmark for all others, to become such a disappointment?
The SNP. Yes.
There's a very simple answer to that question, Mr Speaker. The SNP Scottish Government.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When my right honourable friend discussed with SNP ministers the huge employment opportunities created for young people in Scotland by this government through announcements made this week, will he impress upon them the urgent need they finally tackle the persistent and in some areas widening attainment gap for people from poorer backgrounds they presided over, not only in Fife but also in South Lanarkshire, where these concerns have often been raised by residents of Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse?
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, I don't know if the House will know this, but last year 1,351 pupils left high school in Scotland without a single qualification to their name. 1 in 6 Scots are not in education, employment or training, and that is the legacy of the SNP Scottish Government. And what have they done about jobs and growth? They're against the defence industry, they're against the trade deals with the EU, India and the US, they're against young Scots in Scotland.
Euston.
Question number 6, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, our recent trade deals with the United States, India and the EU will improve access to vital markets for businesses in both Scotland and Northern Ireland. These are deals with the most populous country in the world, the richest country in the world and our most important trading partner. I recognise the importance of economic cooperation between Northern Ireland and Scotland, and indeed earlier this week I met with my honourable friend, the member for South Antrim, and a local business to discuss exactly this.
Susan.
Mr Speaker, would the Minister consider setting up a meeting with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to consider creating a trade fair between Northern Ireland businesses and Scottish businesses? This would create networks, possibly create jobs, and would be great for the economy for both Northern Ireland and Scotland, and would certainly go down well with businesses in North Down, my constituency, and right across the UK.
Mr Speaker, I'd be delighted to see more trade between Scotland and Northern Ireland, and will very happily meet with colleagues in the Northern Ireland office to explore that.
Alan Gamble.
Speaker, Scotland and Northern Ireland set to benefit from this government's trio of trade deals. Does she agree with me it's astonishing the SNP stands with the Tories and Reform against an EU trade deal that's good for Scotland, and that after almost 20 years in government, the SNP have no plan for Scotland? 1 in 6 Scots on NHS waiting lists. Ayrshire ferries late and costing £1 billion. 1 in 6 Scots not in education, employment or training, and no plan for the defence of our union.
Mr Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend that it's absolutely astonishing that we see ranged on the benches opposite numerous people who have talked down the potential of Scotland's exporters, who said that there isn't any benefit to be had from these deals, from a Scottish business sector that is desperate to grow, desperate to export, and is delighted with these 3 trade deals that will make such a difference to them.
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. For years, Scotland's roads have been underinvested in. The A9, A96, A77, A75, all in dire need of upgrading or dualling, all delayed or even cancelled by the SNP. So in the spirit of improving economic cooperation between the nations of the UK, specifically between Scotland and Northern Ireland, given the vital importance to individuals, businesses and hauliers of the A77 and A75, can I ask, is she seeking the consequent Barnett consequentials of this morning's announcement by the Chancellor to be ring-fenced, so the SNP must spend this money on improving roads in Scotland?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm delighted to confirm that we're in ongoing conversation with all relevant parties, but yes, we would like to see an increase in trade and the transport infrastructure that supports it.
Lawrence Sullivan.
7, please, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 7 and 9 together. Mr Speaker, as a former publican, I know these are hard times for businesses on the high street. We're investing £200 million in our plans for neighbourhoods in Scotland, with £20 million worth of funding for towns including Irvine, Greenock, Kilmarnock, Coatbridge, Clydebank, Elgin, Dumfries, Arbroath, Peterhead and Kirkwall. Of course, it would help if the Scottish Government extended business rates relief to retail and leisure businesses, as is the case south of the border. Many businesses in Scotland are asking where that money went.
Dr. Lawrence.
Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it was astonishing that the SNP voted against the £8 million to regenerate Hamilton Town Centre, and that only Labour's Davy Russell will stand up for local people, jobs and services?
Mr Speaker, I've bought glasses to see if I can find an ounce of credibility in the SNP's candidate in Hamilton for voting against that £8 million. The SNP candidate is a councillor from Cambuslang who stood for election twice in Rutherglen, sought selection in Shettleston and then voted against £8 million for the Hamilton Town Centre before seeking selection there. If Scotland were to elect councillors with a single transferable vote, she appears to be the SNP's single transferable candidate.
Becky.
Speaker, proud industrial heritage, a strong community spirit and an overwhelming feeling of being let down and underinvested in by the previous Conservative government is something which unites towns in my constituency with those across Scotland, including those in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse. In Wales, Labour's Transforming Towns programme has invested in Holywell in my constituency. Will the Secretary of State join me? Will the Secretary of State join me in asking and calling on the SNP to U-turn and to finally back Labour's plans to invest in Hamilton Town Centre?
Mr Speaker, what a wonderful representative the Honourable Lady is to her constituency, and I couldn't agree with her more. The SNP candidate is yet to explain to voters in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse why she voted against the much-needed £8 million investment in Hamilton Town Centre. I hope she will explain before tomorrow's vote. If she doesn't, everyone should back Labour's Davy Russell.
Stephen Flynn.
I'll tell you what's bad for town centres, and that is job losses. On the watch of this government, Robert Gordon's University have been forced to publish a report which outlines that there could be 400 job losses in the North Sea every 2 weeks. That is a Grangemouth type shutdown every 2 weeks. How many jobs have to be lost in my constituency for his government to act?
Mr Speaker, the leader of the SNP in this House voted against the setting up of GB Energy in his own constituency that are creating jobs in Scotland. He's against the EU trade deal. He's against the US trade deal. He's against the India trade deal. He is bad for jobs and they should go.
Towns and villages across North East Scotland, such as Aberdeen, Inverurie, Kintore, Ellen in my constituency, they are all going to need regeneration in the future if his government keeps decimating the oil and gas sector. The best thing he can do, that his government can do for the North East of Scotland, is to allow new licences and cut their increase to the EPL. Will he commit to doing this? Otherwise, more and more money will need to be put into North East Scotland to regenerate our towns in the future.
Mr Speaker, it's this government that's putting money into Scottish towns to regenerate them. And as we keep saying from this dispatch box on a number of occasions, the oil and gas will be with us for decades to come, but the industry itself is making the transition. We have to make sure that transition happens, and it happens for the benefit of workers in North East of Scotland and all over Scotland. But it's a transition, Mr Speaker, that I'm not even sure the Honourable Lady or the party opposite actually now back.
Annalise Midgley.
Question number 8, please, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, following the spring statement, it was confirmed that the block grant for Scotland this year was a record £50 billion. No thanks to the SNP and Reform, Mr Speaker, who both voted against this massive funding boost for Scotland and who scrapped the Barnett formula that it delivered it. Despite that record funding, the SNP still have no plan to get waiting lists down, with 1 in 6 Scots still stuck on NHS waiting lists and educational attainment gap growing by the day.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Despite the record funding provided by the Labour government, the SNP plan to downgrade the neonatal intensive care unit at Wishaw General, which could force the families of sick babies to travel as far as Aberdeen for treatment and support. Does he agree with me that the SNP cut should be reversed?
Mr Speaker, as the father of an 18-week-old daughter, I'm absolutely horrified by these proposals, and I know it will be causing anxiety for families across Lanarkshire. That's why it's so disappointing to see the SNP candidate in the Hamilton by-election back these plans to downgrade the Wishaw neonatal unit. The way to send a message to the SNP that this is unacceptable is to vote for Davy Russell tomorrow in the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election.
David Smith.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, the Chancellor's autumn budget delivered the biggest settlement in the history of devolution for the Scottish Government, £50 billion. I want to see that cash reach the frontline services which have suffered years of cuts under the SNP. And that record settlement is only possible because of the Badenoch formula, something opposed not only by the Scottish Nationalists, but also the member for Clacton, whose reform circus was sent packing from Hamilton this week.
David Smith.
Mr Speaker, the largest ever devolution settlement of $50 billion is great news for Scotland and its local authorities. But under the SNP, there are 840,000 cases on NHS waiting lists. This affects people in my constituency in North Northumberland, many of whom use cross-border healthcare and dental services. So, does the Minister agree with me that the SNP needs to sort itself out and start delivering change to the NHS as Labour is in England?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I could not agree more. In England, waiting lists have fallen since Labour came to office less than a year ago, while in Scotland they continue to rise, and now we see nearly 1 in 6 Scots waiting for treatment. John Swinney has, in total desperation, announced this SNP government's 5th recovery NHS plan in less than 4 years. But the reality is patients, staff and we all know Scotland desperately needs a new direction.
Before we start Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to welcome in the gallery the Speaker of Bahrain and his delegation. A big welcome to you. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Clive Efford.
Number 1, Mr Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Today we're investing £15.6 billion in transport infrastructure of the North and of the Midlands. Mr Speaker, we're decisively turning the page on a failed economic model of low investment, and we're backing the talent and prospects of the whole country. And over coming weeks, we'll set out plans for further investment and renewal. Mr Speaker, our strategic defence review shows this government will never gamble with our national security. Through the biggest sustained increase since the Cold War, we will transform our defence, strengthen our nation and invest in jobs and industry across the United Kingdom. Mr Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Clive Efford.
Mr Speaker, we all remember the glorious summer in 2012 when the world's greatest athletes came to London to compete in the Olympics and the Paralympics. It showcased Britain at its best, not just in track and field, but also as a country that can host major cultural and sporting events. Yeah. My right honourable friend has been written to by over 200 of our top athletes. Some of them are members of Cambridge Harriers that meets in my constituency, and they're calling for the government to support the bid for the 2029 World Athletics Championships to take place in London. If successful, it will lift the whole nation. If successful, it will lift the whole nation. It will inspire a generation of new athletes. It will showcase Britain on a world stage, put £400 million into our economy. What's not to like?
I think the race has finished. Go on, Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. One of the greatest achievements of the last Labour government was that 2012 Olympics in London, and we all remember it. Can I pay tribute, given the response, can I pay tribute to the extraordinary contribution of Tessa Jowell to that Games? Agree there have been huge economic benefits of hosting major sporting events, as well as an important legacy.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi.
Mr Speaker, 3 weeks ago, the winter fuel policy was set in stone. 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister U-turned. Today, the Chancellor is rushing her plans because she just realised when winter is. So, on behalf of the pensioners who want to know, can the Prime Minister be clear with us here and now? How many of the 10 million people who lost their winter fuel payments will get it back?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm glad to see she's catching up with what happened 2 weeks ago. Mr Speaker, Mr Speaker, at the budget, we took the right decision to stabilise the economy because of the £22 billion black hole that they left. And the signs, we took the right decisions. The growth figures are up, the interest rates have been cut, and we got 3 trade deals. So we will look again, as I said 2 weeks ago, at the eligibility for winter fuel, and of course we'll set out how we pay for it. But because we've stabilised the economy, Mr Speaker, we on this side are committed to the triple lock, and that increased pensions by over £400 this April. On their side, they say the triple lock is unsustainable, and I think her position is she wants to means test it.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister clearly has selective amnesia. I asked him 3 questions about the winter fuel payment 2 weeks ago, and he was floundering. The fact is, he hasn't answered the question I asked him. He can't tell us who will get the payments. All we see is U-turn after U-turn. His head must be spinning. Will he apologise now for taking the payments away in the first place, including to his own backbenchers? And can he tell us how he's going to pay for this?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we took the right decisions at the budget because we needed to stabilise the economy. She needs to apologise for the fact that they left the economy in a terrible state. We had a mini-budget which blew up the economy, and we were left with a £22 billion black hole. When she gets up, perhaps she should apologise for that.
Mr. Speaker, the OBR has said there was no such black hole. He's just given away £30 billion for the Chagos Island. That's his black hole. He hasn't stabilised the economy. Borrowing prices are higher now than any time in the last Parliament. He has not stabilised the economy. He has no clear answers on what he's doing. It's just chaos, chaos, chaos. He keeps making announcements with no detail. So let's move to another area of confusion. Can we get a simple answer? Will the government keep the 2-child benefit cap?
Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely determined that we will drive down child poverty. That's one of the proudest things of the last Labour government. That's why we've got a task force. That's why we've got a strategy, and we'll set out that strategy in due course. But we drive child poverty down. Under them, poverty always goes up.
I didn't ask him about a task force. I asked him if he will keep the 2-child benefit cap, and he doesn't know. It's just chaos and uncertainty. He has no details. He is briefing something and causing a lot of confusion to the people out there. But on that 2-child benefit cap, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell him this. I believe in family, but I also believe in fairness. Yes. On this side of the House, we believe that people on benefits should have to make the same choices on having children as everyone else. What does the Prime Minister believe?
Mr. Speaker, I believe profoundly in driving down poverty and child poverty. That's why we'll put a strategy in place. But she talks about head spinning. There's only one leader, Mr. Speaker, who's been praised this week by the Russian embassy. And if she carries on echoing Kremlin talking points like this, Reform are going to be sending her an application form for membership.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister what he believes in. He had to look in his folder to find the answer. His MPs behind him know what they believe in. He doesn't know. Mr. Speaker, he has been in government for nearly a year. It's only going to get harder. Yes. He's been in government only a year. It's only going to get harder and harder. The canned forced laughter, the planted questions, all of this is going to disappear because at every single point, things are getting worse. He has to ask Morgan McSweeney what it is that he believes in. But the fact is the chaos is being felt in the economy. The Chancellor said she would not be coming back with new tax rises, but she will have to pay for all of these U-turns which she's announcing out there, isn't she?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to look in my folder because here I've got the quote that she had on Sky News. I will read it, thank you. It's what the Leader of the Opposition says. It's worth listening to. What she said was this. Sky News, Mr. Speaker, Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the United Kingdom, just like Ukraine is on behalf of Western Europe against Russia. Well, that was certainly noticed in the Russian embassy because they put out a statement saying the Leader of the Opposition has finally called a spade a spade. Ukraine is indeed fighting a proxy war against Russia on behalf of Western interests. And they went on to say the illegitimate Kyiv regime, created, financed and armed by the West, has been at it since 2014. So they endorsed. They want the detail. I've given the quote. That's what Russia said in response. She asked me what I believe in. I believe in standing by Ukraine and calling out Russia as the aggressor.
Mr. Speaker, it was our government that stood behind Ukraine and led the way in Europe. everything he has said this afternoon is total nonsense, obfuscation, avoiding the question. He doesn't have any answers. It's disgraceful. I asked him, Mr. Speaker, about the two-child benefit cap. He's talking about the Kremlin. He's saying everything he can to distract from the mess he is making of our economy. The OECD has downgraded growth for the next 2 years. He can't rule out tax rises. The police chiefs are saying they don't have the money they need to keep the public safe. Just as he's releasing more criminals onto the streets. His cabinet are squabbling with each other. They've said that they've lost control of the borders, but he still managed, Mr. Speaker, to find £30 billion to give away the Chagos Islands. This is total and utter chaos. 2 weeks ago, he was crowing about his historic trade deal and how he got 0% tariffs on steel. Now the steel industry will face 25% tariffs unless he does exactly what President Trump tells him to. It is chaos, chaos, chaos. And isn't the root of the chaos, Mr. Speaker, that it is about this Prime Minister, his decisions and his judgment?
The only advice, Mr. Speaker, she gets up on a Wednesday morning, scrolls through social media, never does anything. We're the only country in the world that isn't paying the 50% tax on steel. And we're working in the US, and that will be coming down. We are working on it to bring it down to zero. That is going to happen.
Order. Please. Let's listen to the answer, even if you don't believe you're getting one. It is how the Prime Minister wishes to.
What did she opposes the US deal, she opposes the India deal, she opposes what we're doing with the EU, and she opposes Diego Garcia. That's a vital intelligence and strategic capability. Absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise that capability in a very short time. No responsible Prime Minister would ever let that happen. We have secured the long-term basis for the base. That has been welcomed by Mr. Speaker, welcomed by the US, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, India. They're our allies. It's been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And into that column we have reform, presumably following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Claire Hammer.
Anyone who saw the 6-year-old girl fleeing the flaming shelter where her family were killed by an Israeli airstrike will carry those horrific images with them forever. These are very dark days, and Gaza is a stain on the soul of humanity, and it is a further shame that there is more moral clarity coming from Ms. Rachel on YouTube than there is from many world leaders who are complicit in silence. The Prime Minister said this week that Britain must be ready for war, and I ask, after tens of thousands of deaths, after a generation of Gazans stunted by hunger and trauma, when will it be ready for peace? When will it help to stop this genocide? When will it hold the Israeli government to account? And when will it recognise the State of Palestine?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to her for raising this, and she's absolutely right to describe this as dark days. And Israel's recent action is appalling and, in my view, counterproductive and intolerable. And we have strongly opposed the expansion of military operations and settler violence and the blocking of humanitarian aid. Mr. Speaker, you will have seen we've suspended the FTA talks and sanctioned extremists supporting violence in the West Bank. We will keep looking at further action along with our allies, including sanctions. But let me be absolutely clear. We need to get back to a ceasefire. We need the hostages who've been held for a very long time to be released. And we desperately need more aid at speed and at volume into Gaza, because it's an appalling and intolerable situation.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by welcoming reports that the Chancellor will give winter fuel payments to more pensioners this winter, though because we still wait the details, we will reserve our full judgment. But, Mr. Speaker, can I recognise the efforts of the Prime Minister to pull out all the stops to avoid President Trump's damaging tariffs? A letter from the King offering to water down online safety laws, even trying to send the Open to one of Trump's golf courses. The Prime Minister thought he'd secured 0% tariffs for British steel, but now Trump is threatening us with 50% unless we comply with his new 5-week deadline. Mr. Speaker, this is classic Trump, changing the terms of a deal he had already agreed. Does the Prime Minister share my fear that nothing will stop Trump messing the UK around, short of bunging a few £100 million into his Trump coin?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have a deal, we're implementing it, and within a very short time I'm very confident we will get those tariffs down in accordance with the deal. And I'll come back to him and update the House in due course, and I think the House will be very pleased at the outcome of that. But because of the approach... No, wait. This is zero tariffs on steel, and he says, no, they wouldn't. Well, let's come back to this in just a couple of weeks when we've implemented it. But they obviously don't want this. We back steel, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House. They laugh at attempts to back steel on their side of the House, and that's a big part of the problem.
David.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I had hoped the Prime Minister would be now beginning to see the sort of man that Trump is and start getting tough on him. So we will come back to this issue. But moving on, Mr. Speaker, I welcome the remarks of the Prime Minister on Gaza, because I'm sure all of us are appalled by the latest scenes. Starving people desperate for food, water and medicine met with chaos and violence. The US-Israeli programme is clearly failing. And nothing short of lifting the full blockade on aid will do. But given the Netanyahu government refuses to do that, will the Prime Minister take more decisive action today? Will he push at the United Nations Security Council for humanitarian corridors to get the desperately needed aid urgently into Gaza?
Minister.
Can I give him my assurance, because this is a very important issue, that we are working at pace with our allies on that very issue to take whatever measures we can to get that humanitarian aid in. We've been doing that intensively over recent weeks, and I can give him my assurance we'll continue to do that, because that aid needs to get in at speed and at volume, and he's absolutely right about that.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been over 2 decades since the Labour government banned the cruel practice of fur farming. But the job is not done. Real fur and fur products are still being imported into the UK. This week, I delivered a petition to Number 10 with over 1 million signatures calling for a fur-free Britain. My private member's bill would do exactly that. So does my right honourable friend agree it's time to close the loopholes, ban the import and sale of real fur, and finally put the fur trade out of fashion?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for her campaign? I know the Environment Minister will have heard her representations. We have commissioned the Expert Animal Welfare Committee to produce a full report on responsible sourcing of fur to inform the next steps that need to be taken, and we're committed to publishing an animal welfare strategy later this week.
Rachel.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent Molly is a single mother caring for a child with cancer. She cannot work because of her caring responsibilities. Since January, she has tried to claim disability living allowance and universal credit, but faced constant DWP bureaucracy. This bureaucracy is continuing right up to yesterday, when she received yet another frustrating letter from the DWP about her DLA. Will the Prime Minister assure Molly and others like her that his government is doing all that it can to help, and visit Tiverton and Minehead to see these challenges firsthand and work with me to find a solution?
Prime Minister.
Well, I can thank her for raising this case, and I'm deeply sorry to hear about Molly's situation. We are improving the lives of those that need it, but what I'll do, with her permission, the Secretary of State, the DWP, has just said to me, I'll look into the case. So if she could provide the details, I'll make sure that it gets proper attention and that we can deal with the particular problem she's raised. And I'm grateful to her, and I'm sure Molly is, for raising it. And I hope now we can take the action that's necessary.
Alex Burrows.
Mr. Speaker, in Wales, we will never forget how our steel industry was neglected by the Conservative government. They made unfunded promises, they refused to make critical decisions, and they left Port Talbot on a cliff edge. So can I welcome the news overnight that this Labour government has secured an exemption for our steel industry from the latest US tariffs, a deal secured by this Labour Prime Minister. Can I ask the Prime Minister if he will take this opportunity to update the House on what further work he is doing in order to support our steel workers across Wales and across our United Kingdom?
Prime Minister.
He's doing great work with the Welsh Labour colleagues to champion working people in Wales. Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom is the only country in the world which won't be subject to the additional tariffs announced today, the only country in the world, and we are working with the US at this moment to swiftly implement the agreement that we've reached, which will see the 25% tariffs removed. We want that, they don't want that, and that's crucial. That is crucial for British jobs. We fought tooth and nail for our steel industry, saving jobs at British Steel and improving the deal at Port Talbot, and we'll continue to do so.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has repeatedly told this House that it is not for him or his government to determine what is and what is not a genocide. But that position is no longer tenable, because at the High Court recently, the Prime Minister instructed his lawyers to argue that in Gaza, and I quote, "no genocide has occurred or is occurring." So the truth is, his government has made a determination. The question is, does he have the courage of his convictions, and will he repeat from that dispatch box what he told his lawyers to argue in the High Court, that he believes that no genocide has occurred or is occurring in Gaza?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've said that we are strongly opposed and appalled by Israel's recent actions. I've been absolutely clear in condemning them and calling them out, whether that's the expansion of military operations, settler violence, or the dreadful blocking of aid. It's completely unacceptable. We must see a ceasefire, hostages must be released, and there must be aid into Gaza. But he talks about peace and security, Mr. Speaker. Compare their party, as I understand it, at this moment of global instability, as we go into a new era. What do they want to do? They want to get rid of the nuclear deterrent, the single most important capability that we have to keep the UK safe, harming the industry and harming the country.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Speaker. Carnegie UK was established by Dunfermline-born philanthropist Andrew Carnegie, and they found that people under 49 are twice as likely to have been negatively impacted by the rising cost of living compared to those over 65s. Mr. Speaker, it's vital we increase opportunities for younger people and help put more money in their pocket. But sadly this week we saw the Scottish Government seek to close off an opportunity for young people by refusing to support new skills investment from Rolls-Royce, while the college sector in Scotland also warns of a funding crisis. Can I ask the Prime Minister what more he is doing to make sure young people in Scotland get the opportunities they deserve despite a failing and stagnant SNP Scottish Government?
Well, I thank him for raising this. At a time of global conflict, it is staggering that the SNP policy is to block an £11 million investment for a new national welding centre on the Clyde. To block it. I was there, Mr. Speaker, earlier this week. I saw the huge potential for apprenticeships, for job opportunities and for young people. I support it, they block it. In England, Mr. Speaker, we're backing 120,000 more apprentices and £3 billion of funding as part of our plan for change. And despite the highest funding settlement in the history of devolution, they're cutting college budgets, they're blocking opportunities, they have no plan for Scotland's future.
Sir Poachin.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, with no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During recess, I visited Scottish Action for Mental Health's Red Hall Walled Garden, which I'm proud to say is in Edinburgh South West. It has operated for decades as a therapeutic horticultural centre supporting adults with mental health problems. Like similar community mental health services across Scotland, it is now under threat. It faces potential closure due to chronic underfunding of IGBs by the SNP government. Does the Prime Minister agree that facilities like Red Hall Walled Garden should have been a priority for the SNP when deciding how to spend the record funding settlement Scottish Labour MPs won for Scotland?
Prime Minister.
What my honourable friend describes is how health services in Scotland are utterly broken under the SNP. From people waiting too long for mental health support in his constituency to the Wishaw neonatal unit in Hamilton, which the SNP are threatening to downgrade. In 2021, the SNP said they recruit 1,000 more community mental health workers. They utterly failed to do so. If the SNP had a plan to fix Scotland's NHS, they'd have done it by now. Scotland needs a change of direction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir John Cunliffe's interim report published yesterday laid out the fundamental changes that are needed for our water sector. This is felt no more acutely than in my constituency of Chichester. We have a harbour that's in an unfavourable declining condition, and sewage is blighting our tourism industry. But with water bills from Southern Water rising by 47% for my constituents, can the Prime Minister tell them when they can expect to see the real change that this government promised and our waterways cleaned up for good?
Well, can I share her anger and frustration at the broken water system that we inherited, with frankly appalling sewage, higher bills and executives paying themselves huge bonuses. And the era of being rewarded for failure is over. We've launched a record 81 criminal investigations into law-breaking water companies in England, introduced the Water Act with prison sentences for polluting bosses and banning unfair bonuses, and will respond to the Independent Water Commission in full following the publication of the final report.
David Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The proposed Hemel Health Campus, a partnership between the NHS and the Council, presents a perfect opportunity to deliver on Labour's commitment to neighbourhood-based care, bringing services closer to where people live in facilities designed around their needs. It can also help to regenerate our town centre. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is essential that all stakeholders involved in the project are as ambitious as possible and work to deliver a community hospital that builds on the services currently available and reflects the evolving needs of our town?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I pay tribute to how he's bringing people together to deliver better care in the community that meets the needs of his constituents? The proposals for the health campus will be open to public consultation. I'd urge the whole community to input into that to ensure the strongest investment case is put forward. I'm pleased that waiting lists in his local trust have fallen by a fifth since March 24 because of the investment that we've put into the NHS, which of course was opposed by the parties opposite.
I'm going to put together.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past few months, I've been meeting with care providers in my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon who deliver essential and expert care to some of my most vulnerable constituents. But like so many small businesses, they are under huge financial pressures, and the hike in national insurance is yet another burden many can't afford. I welcome the government party U-turn on winter fuel payment cuts following pressure from these Liberal Democrat benches. So when will the Prime Minister offer relief to care providers and other small businesses and U-turn on the punitive hike to national insurance?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we announced £502 million to support local authorities to manage the changes in NICs. We put £3.7 billion in additional funding for social care, doubled the Disabilities Facilities Grant, and introducing the first ever fair pay agreement for professional carers, including minimum standards for pay. But I would just gently say to her, her party opposed the budget which provides the money for the funding. You can't keep asking for more spending and oppose a budget which raises the money.
Natalie Fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first constituent to reach out to me was a brave bowls-over mummy who had waited 4 years, 5 months from rape to prosecution, with 3 postponements and multiple suicide attempts. I will do everything I can to use this chamber to speak out for women that are being so badly let down. How will the Prime Minister support me to make sure that when these survivors, these formidable women across the country come forward, they will get justice and there will be space in our prisons for their perpetrators?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for raising this case so powerfully and everything that she's doing on it? The case she's outlined is utterly shameful, and for far too many victims are waiting too long for justice. Mr. Speaker, we're delivering a record number of sitting days, reviewing criminal courts to speed up the hearing of these cases and have as a mission to halve violence against women and girls. She talks about the prison system. The party opposite left the prison system on the brink of collapse, routinely operating at 99% capacity because in 14 long years they only added just 500 extra places. We will deliver 14,000 new prison places so the public are protected from these vile offenders.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister told us during the general election that he is a socialist. What's been more surprising is to find out in the last couple of weeks that the leader of the Reform Party might be one too. As the Chancellor puts the spending review and locks it down, will the Prime Minister please remind her of Mrs Thatcher's all too pertinent observation that the trouble is with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money to spend.
Was it Kwasi Kwarteng that he replaced? And now he stands there to give lectures on economic prudence. You couldn't script it. But, Mr. Speaker, the difference between the Labour government and the parties opposite in Reform is we believe in properly costing our plans. They've got £80 billion worth of unfunded commitments. Liz Truss 2.0.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Blackpool's own boxing champion Brian Rose uses his gym to tackle knife crime, antisocial behaviour and give young people a safe space, demonstrating the significant impact of amateur gyms. Thousands of these amateur gyms up and down the country operate on a shoestring and can't afford to keep the lights on, relying on brilliant charities like Maverick All-Stars, Empire's Fighting Chance and Matchroom in the Community. Would the Prime Minister join me in thanking these charities, praising the volunteers in these gyms, and will he throw a haymaker behind these gyms, giving them the knockout support they need to continue their vital work?
Well, can I thank him? He's a great champion for how amateur boxing gyms can transform both physical and mental health and confidence in young people. And the time, I have to say, given by selfless volunteers is inspiring, and we should thank them for it. England Boxing are investing £9 million in the sport, and GB Boxing will also receive more than £12 million during the next Olympic Games cycle. And I know my honourable friend will be looking forward to Liverpool hosting the inaugural World Boxing Championship, I think in September.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since July, health services in my constituency have got worse. The Chase Hospital may close. In Borden, the promised health hub has not arrived. And in Haslemere this week, we've learnt that inpatient wards are being closed because of a lack of GP cover. The Prime Minister promised hundreds of more GPs. Could he possibly send one or two of them to Farnham and Borden?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I remind myself they left the NHS on its knees. The last Labour government brought the waiting list down to record lows. They drove them up to record highs. The last Labour government had the highest possible confidence in the NHS. They dragged it down to the lowest ever levels. Because of the money that we're putting in, we've done 3 million extra appointments in the first year of a Labour government. That's the difference Labour makes in power.
David Pinto-Chichinsky.
Mr. Speaker, the Environment Agency predicts that 8 million homes, that's 1 in 4 in England, could be at risk of flooding by 2050. But despite this, the party opposite presided over a tripling of the proportion of our flood defences deemed not adequate. By contrast, this Labour government is investing over £2.6 billion in new flood defences, including in the Greenway in my Hendon constituency. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's a shame that not all parties share this government's determination to keep homes safe from flooding?
Prime Minister.
I thank you for highlighting this, because the party opposite left our flood defences in the worst state on record. It's prisons, it's NHS, it's the economy, it's flooding. Every single thing they touched, they broke. We're investing £2.65 million to build and maintain flood defences, and that means 52,000 more properties will be protected by March of next year.
Mr Speaker, Glastonbury is experiencing a notable increase in antisocial behaviour. St John's Church was recently forced to close its doors after gravestones were reportedly used as counters for drug transactions. Constituents Peter and Melanie told me that people have been targeted when collecting their pensions with demands for money, leaving them feeling scared and overwhelmed. The lawlessness is deterring tourists, and business owners have told me trade is suffering. As visitors start to arrive ahead of the Glastonbury Festival, could the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that he will give the police the additional resource that they need to tackle this threatening and menacing behaviour to reduce the devastating crime wave sweeping through the town?
Well, she's absolutely right to raise this, and antisocial behaviour massively impacts on individuals and their communities, and that's why we're introducing 13,000 new neighbourhood police and giving them better powers, respect orders, so they can actually deal with what they see on the streets effectively. It's very important we take this seriously.
David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This time last year, Southend United Football Club almost went bankrupt thanks to the mismanagement by the former owner. But on Sunday, they made it to Wembley for the National League playoff finals. And despite being beaten by Oldham Athletic in the 11th hour, it was like the phoenix rising from the flames to see them on the pitch. So will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Southend United on their outstanding recovery, and give me an assurance that the government's doing all they can to make sure that no club ever has to go through what our club went through?
Let me congratulate Southend on what was an incredible achievement. Commiserations for the final result. One of the police officers on my team, Mr Speaker, is an ardent Southend supporter, so I know all about the team and the plans and the stadium and what it means. But I should also congratulate Oldham, of course, for that victory as well. Thank you.
Right, final question, Sir David Davis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In 1999, the Prime Minister produced a book on miscarriage of justice, recommending ways of preventing them or quickly putting them right. But in 2014, people who had been wrongly imprisoned and then exonerated were only allowed compensation if they could prove their innocence beyond reasonable doubt. This ignored the decision of the court exonerating them, and actually meant that 93% of people who had been wrongfully imprisoned, often had their lives destroyed, got no compensation whatsoever. This is an institutional miscarriage of justice. Will he instruct the Department of Justice to review this matter and pay personal attention to actually getting this travesty of justice resolved?
Prime Minister.
Well, he raises a really important issue that I'm obviously aware of. It is right that victims of miscarriage can apply for compensation and appropriately do so, and I'll take away what he says and have it looked at.
Right, with that completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front bench change over. Point of order. Can the honourable gentleman find a seat, please? Can't just stand there and just have a conversation. Point of order, Jesse Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this House and indeed the viewing public have just been treated to the very unfortunate spectacle of a Prime Minister who is completely unwilling to answer questions from the Leader of the Opposition. So much so that he entirely changed the subject and started, instead of referring to the child benefit cap, started referring to the Kremlin and Russia. I know that you, Mr. Speaker, pay careful attention to the content of supplementary questions to make sure that they are within scope. Could you give us some guidance as to whether you may be able to control answers when they are wildly inappropriate?
Can I just say, as somebody who knows quite rightly how this House runs, also knows that I have no responsibility for the answers that are given by ministers. What I would say is put his point on the record, but I've been in this House since 1997, and I can honestly say, and we both can honestly say, the scope has always been that we've always questioned the answers, whoever has been at that dispatch box. So nothing has quite changed, but the point is on the record. Right. Let us now move to the first of the statements. We call on the Secretary of the Treasury, Darren Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I would like to update the House on the government's work to boost growth across the United Kingdom. As the Prime Minister set out in the Plan for Change, economic growth is the #1 mission of this government. It is key to delivering on the government's goals: higher wages for working people, delivering economic and national security, and investing in our public services. Mr. Speaker, we are already making progress. The most recent figures showed that the United Kingdom was the fastest growing economy of any G7 country in the first quarter of the year, and that real wages have risen more since July 2024 than over the first 10 years of the previous Conservative government. But we are keenly aware, Mr. Speaker, that this progress must be widely felt in every part of the country. As such, our plans for regional growth will be hardwired into the spending review and infrastructure strategy, which will be set out in more detail in the coming weeks. This investment will be targeted squarely at the renewal of Britain and fixed on the priorities of working people, delivering on the promise of change, improving lives and communities across the country. This morning, the Chancellor set out her next steps for nationwide growth in a series of speeches across the North and the Midlands, and I am pleased to update the House on those announcements now. A key part of the government's growth mission is the view that growth relies on dynamic, interconnected city regions, creating clusters of activity where people can get around, communicate, share ideas, commute, find good work, and earn wages that flow back into strong local economies. As most members know, the majority of our city regions have poor public transport systems, holding back growth and improvements to air quality and making it harder to get around. Stronger transport links are therefore crucial. They create opportunities for individuals to access a wider pool of jobs, for employers to access a wider labour market, and for businesses to expand the market for their goods and services. If we were to increase the productivity of our largest city regions outside London just to match the national average, this would grow the economy by £86 billion. So, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to say that this government is making the biggest investment in intra-city transport connectivity that this country has ever seen. The spending review will allocate funding for ambitious local transport programmes across England, including the new Transport for City Regions Fund launched by the government today. This will give 9 city region mayors a share of £15.6 billion in long-term Transport for City region settlements running until 2032. The benefits and opportunities will be felt in the cities and towns across these combined authorities and by those who commute to work from outside those city regions. The previous government said they would do some of this, but as is always the case, they never put the money aside to pay for it. As a result of our reforms to the fiscal rules and decision to increase investment at Autumn Budget 2024, this Labour government is delivering. Mr. Speaker, the funding announced today will mean that the Mayor of West Yorkshire can now fully commit to delivering the West Yorkshire Mass Transit System, which will be fully integrated with cycling, walking, bus and rail, making journeys quicker, more accessible and more reliable across the region. The Mayor of the West Midlands can extend the metro from Birmingham city centre to the new Sports Quarter, unlocking more than £3 billion of private investment, bringing benefits and opportunities to those living in the constituency of my right honourable friend, the member for Birmingham Ladywood, and all those that travel there. It will mean that the Mayor of Greater Manchester can grow and transform the Metrolink tram network, building new tram stops in Bury, Manchester and Oldham, which will help drive up living standards for the constituents of my honourable friends, the members for Bury North and South, and Oldham East and Saddleworth, and for others in the North West region. The Mayor of the Liverpool City region can deliver 3 new rapid bus routes, linking up the city centre, John Lennon Airport, the new Everton Stadium on Bramley Moor Dock, and new homes built on the Central Docks redevelopment and Anfield. And the Mayor of the North East will now be able to extend the Tyne Wear Metro, linking Washington with Newcastle and Sunderland, connecting those living in my honourable friend, the member for Washington and Gateshead South constituency, to new jobs and opportunities. And Mr. Speaker, if I may, can I pay particular tribute to the honourable member for Washington and Gateshead South, who has campaigned for this project for years and years, now being delivered by a Labour government. This investment will also mean, Mr. Speaker, that the Mayor for South Yorkshire can renew the existing and now publicly owned Supertram network with track replacements, overhead line maintenance, rolling stock renewal, and yielding a fleet of new vehicles by 2032, linking jobs and homes in Sheffield and the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for Rotherham. We are backing the Mayor of West of England's plans for mass transit development across the region, with improved rail infrastructure to help unlock more services between Brabazon and Bristol city centre, meaning shorter journey times to Bristol Temple Meads across the wider area, and providing greater opportunities for those in my honourable friend, the member for Filton and Bradley Stokes constituency, and in declaring my own interest, Mr. Speaker, in my own. And after years, Mr. Speaker, and after years of the Mayor of Tees Valley trying to persuade his Conservative colleagues to fund these important projects, I'm delighted to confirm today that this Labour government is now backing the region to invest in, for example, the Middlesbrough station in my honourable friend, the member for Middlesbrough and Thornbury East constituency, unblocking local networks and increasing capacity on local lines. And can I pay particular thanks to my honourable friends, the members in the Teesside region, who have lobbied hard to see this investment in their region now being delivered by a Labour government. And the Mayor of the East Midlands can now forge the Trent Arc, linking Derby and Nottingham to create tens of thousands of new jobs and homes, connecting Infinity Park Investment Zone and the East Midlands Freeport, with sites including Ratcliffe-on-Soar Clean Energy and Advanced Manufacturing, and East Midlands Intermodal Park, home of Toyota in the region, along the Trent Arc corridor. Mr. Speaker, this funding is substantial, marking a 2.4 times real terms increase in spending on city-region connectivity, funding the priorities that matter to hard-working people living across the country. Mr. Speaker, these announcements were only made possible today because at the autumn budget in 2024, the Chancellor took the necessary action to reform the fiscal rules, to improve stability after years of chaos from the party opposite, and to unlock investment. This means that government can now provide greater investment in Britain's economic revival, as for the first time, the Treasury takes account of the value of financial assets and not just the costs of investment. This has enabled us to increase investment by over £113 billion more than the last Conservative government, whilst keeping debt on a sustainable path, only made possible by the credibility of our fiscal rules, which require day-to-day spending to be funded with revenue. It is more important than ever, Mr. Speaker, to have a robust fiscal framework. And I'm pleased to note that the OBR confirmed at the spring statement that the government will meet its stability and investment rules 2 years ahead of schedule. In addition to her announcements today regarding transport for city region settlements, the Chancellor will set out further detail on this allocation of additional funding at next week's spending review. Moving on, Mr. Speaker, in January, the Chancellor announced a review of the Green Book, the government guidance on appraising options for investment. Since then, we have consulted extensively with stakeholders from across the country, considering potential problems with the Green Book guidance itself and how the guidance is being applied in practice. And can I pay thanks and tribute to many honourable members across the House for engaging on this important issue. We will publish the full conclusions of this review next week. It will mark, Mr. Speaker, a new approach to government decision-making, one which puts an end to siloed Whitehall thinking and takes account of the reinforcing economic effects of infrastructure, housing, skills and jobs to ensure investment takes place in every part of the country. These announcements, Mr. Speaker, reflect just a fraction of our plans to supercharge growth across the United Kingdom. We are focused on investing across all parts of the country to boost prosperity and deliver the change that the British people voted for at last year's election, and there is more to come. The spending review, which we will publish next week, will set out in further detail how an active government will continue to deliver growth, empowering all regions and nations of the UK to reach their full potential, and making working people across the country better off, no matter where they choose to live and work. And unlike the Conservative Party opposite, Mr. Speaker, who will tell you that they would have delivered on their false promises after 14 years of failing to do so, this Labour government in its first year in office is delivering. A country that people will see as being set up for success and that they can take part in. That is the change we promised, and that is the change this Labour government is delivering. And, Mr. Speaker, I commend the statement to the House.
I think you missed Coppell Railway Station out of your statement. Not to a rich and fuller.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Chief Secretary of the Treasury for his statement and early sight of it. And to start with our agreement, it's a shared ambition to enable all parts of this country to participate in the growth and future. Potential in the United Kingdom is everywhere, and it is right that the government seeks to unlock that potential with every means that it can. Indeed, that was one of the guiding principles of the 2019 to 24 Conservative administration with levelling up. And they always say, Mr. Speaker, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Now, we know, Mr. Speaker, that this Chancellor has a reputation for copying. So I thought I would have a look at the statement made in 2023, which I'm sure the Chief Secretary has seen, of allocations for Network North allocations. And I thought I would compare them, Mr. Speaker, with today's government's announcements. These were the Conservative announcements. These were the Labour announcements. They can shout all they want, Mr. Speaker. Here we go. So let's go. 2023, Conservative promise for the West Midlands, £2.64 billion. I say to all the members opposite, the Chief Secretary is only making a promise. £2.4 billion for West Midlands, 2.1 for West Yorkshire, 2.1 today, 2.5 for Greater Manchester, 2.5 today, 1.45 in 2023, 1.5 today, 1.581 for Liverpool, 1.6 today, 1.84 for the North East, 1.8 today, 0.752 in 2023 for the West of England, 0.8 today, 978 million for the Tees Valley in 2023, 1 billion for Labour today. Mr. Speaker, the truth is, and I know the Chief Secretary is occasionally good with numbers, but does he not agree that essentially what he's announcing today is nothing more than a rounding error on the Conservative plans for 2023? In fact, Mr. Speaker, the only difference between 2023 and 2025 announcements is that in our announcement, we would have spelt the town of Rotherham correctly. Mr. Speaker, the truth is that the Chancellor will go around the country rewriting history as frequently as she writes her CV. But nobody believes in her £22 billion black hole. What they do believe is that this Chancellor is open to change. She's going to roll back the issues on winter fuel allowance. She's going to roll back her botched welfare reform. She's going to roll back changes on the two-child policy. To Labour backbenchers opposite, I would say, look at their front bench, their Treasury front bench. They haven't got a spine. If you've got an issue in your constituency and you think you want to stand up for your constituents, make a bid for this Chief Secretary, because he will back down and give you the money. That's what we know from Labour. And we also know, Mr. Speaker, that in the analysis that the government is taking about the Green Book, what they're looking to do is change the assessments of the cost-benefit analysis. So my question to the Chief Secretary is, I do have a number of questions. Will he publish the benefit-cost ratios for each of the projects he's announced today? Will he state whether these have been evaluated on the existing Green Book rules or on the new Green Book rules? And will he today give an indication about what those rules might be? Secondly, can he indicate, as the Labour government tries to decide whether their commitment is to 2% of GDP for defence, 2.5%, 3% or 3.5%, those numbers stretching into the next period of government, but also the investments today stretching into the next period of government, whoever's in government, can he confirm that it's this government's intentions that the investments today will be secure, whatever changes are made on defence expenditures? Mr. Speaker, the Chief Secretary said that he's able to do this because they changed the rules. That's enabled 113 billion more of investment. That's not quite right, is it? Because you can only afford the additional investment, a government can only afford the additional investment if people are prepared to fund it. And there are two people who fund it. It is taxpayers or it is the bond market. So can the Chief Secretary advise whether he is going to look for additional funding from taxes or whether he is looking for additional borrowing if there is a shortfall? Mr. Speaker, the truth is, despite what the backbenchers say, that this Labour Treasury team is out of its depth. It is addicted to tax increases. It is addicted to more borrowing. The Chief Secretary can republish as many press releases as he likes. But we know that because of the reckless mismanagement of the economy, come the autumn, this Labour government will be back for more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I always enjoy our exchanges, and I'm pleased to see the Shadow Chief Secretary back in his place today. Can I also welcome the fact that he supports our plans and sees the good value in them? He asked me one particular question, and then I'll answer the rest in the round. On the Green Book details, all of the details will be published next week at the spending review, so we'll be able to share that with him in the House at that time. Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Chief Secretary also said that we were imitating the Conservative Party's promise to level up the country. I think the British people voted and gave a verdict on their success in delivering that at the last election. Their version of levelling up, Mr. Speaker, was a set of false promises, whereas this Labour government is delivering real change. And the Shadow Chief Secretary, rightly in his role, asked, how will you fund these announcements today? And I've explained in my statement to the House, Mr. Speaker, that it's because of the decisions the Chancellor took to amend the fiscal rules and to invest in Britain instead of continuing with decline that we've been able to do so. But the Shadow Chief Secretary and the Conservative Party haven't said what they would do differently. They were against the change in the fiscal rules. They were against our increasing taxes on the wealthiest people at the budget. They were against every single measure we've taken to be able to pay for the announcements today. So whether it's the Conservative Party, the Reform Party, or any other party, they need to recognise that their false promises has led to their decline, that their unfunded promises is disrespectful to the British people, that this Labour government promised change at the election, that we are delivering it. These are fully funded promises, unlike the unfunded promises of the party opposite, which posed a risk to the economy and a risk to the family finances. And the sooner they learn from their lessons, apologise to the British people, and come forward with some serious proposals, the better for the debate in this House.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I warmly welcome this investment in Britain and hope that the Treasury will be fully evaluating the impact of this vital transport infrastructure on growth in regions, which we know has always lagged, except for London and the South West. Mr. Speaker, it is important, though, that these figures are set now, fully funded, but we are aware, with all the global shocks that are around, that there could be additional costs on some of the raw materials being used, and any delay obviously adds costs. So will the Chief Secretary tell us what the plans are if costs do go higher? Is it going to be fully funded regardless, or will they have to go back to the drawing board if there are challenges?
I thank my honourable friend, the Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, who rightly alludes to the fact that the Chancellor's speech today is making the case for this government investing in every part of the country and making sure that growth is felt widely. She asks me about supply chain and costs for building infrastructure. She will know, as the House will know, that Britain has unfortunately become a country where most of our infrastructure projects go over time and over budget as a failure of poor industrial policy, poor infrastructure policy, and erratic decision-making over many, many years. Alongside the spending review, we will be publishing at a slightly later stage the infrastructure strategy, which will answer many of her questions in relation to government policy, recognising the problem that she's raised and the solutions that we'll be setting out to support the supply chain to be able to deliver for Britain.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We Liberal Democrats believe that when the economy is growing, every nation, every region and every person should feel and see the benefits. So we're pleased to see investment in public transport and public infrastructure. But I have to ask the Minister, where is the plan and the money for rural areas? The Minister will remember that at the budget, we Liberal Democrats did support and welcomed the government's changes to the fiscal rules that allowed for more productive, for borrowing and more productive investment. And we're delighted to see that one of the beneficiaries of the announcement today is the Metro link to Stockport, which is a testimony to the campaigning of Liberal Democrats who've been campaigning on this for far longer than the Mayor or the Combined Authority even existed. But from Shropshire to the southwest, and from Cumbria to Cornwall, and from Norfolk to Newton Abbot, rural areas feel once again like they have been forgotten. So will the government bring forward a rural growth strategy? Could I also ask the Minister about Wales? Because we know that in Wales, HS2 and the Oxford-Cambridge line have been designated as England-Wales lines as opposed to England only. And I wonder if the Minister could explain to the people of Wales why it is that that has happened and why they are set to lose out on Barnett consequentials. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is one big missing piece of the puzzle. Many of us right-minded people want to see investment in infrastructure. But if we want to build stuff, we need skilled people to build it. So could I ask the Minister, will the government now fix the apprenticeship levy so it can be spent on skills and training? When will the government produce its skills strategy? Why has Skills England been set up as an executive agency of the DfE rather than having employers at its heart, as was promised? And why is the government scrapping the Level 7 apprenticeship when we know it supports social mobility, including into engineering? We welcome this investment into transport infrastructure, but that transport infrastructure will not build itself. We need the people skilled to do it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased the Liberal Democrats welcome the announcements today. The announcement today is specifically about investment in city regions. The House will know that the Chancellor at the autumn budget in 2024 said that this Labour government is choosing investment over decline, which is why we are increasing investment into every part of the country. Announcements outside of city regions will come next week at the spending review, and to some of her broader questions on policy the week after at the infrastructure strategy. So with her permission, she'll have to bear with me, but there is good news coming because Labour is delivering.
Clive Betts.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I very much welcome the commitment to city regions. Our city regions have underperformed compared with the national average in terms of growth compared with continental cities. Could I just address the issue of South Yorkshire? I welcome the £1.5 billion to restore and renew our tram network and to improve our bus services. But I understand from the Mayor there are still discussions going on about a tram train project to link Stocksbridge in the north and Bayton and Woodhouse in my constituency in the south. That project will unlock sites for housing and employment growth. Will my right honourable friend agree now to give further consideration to discussions with the Mayor to get that extra funding for those growth projects unlocked?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As he's alluded to, the Mayor for South Yorkshire has been given £1.5 billion. This is in line with our commitment to devolution and to city region mayors. So the fund is for the Mayor to decide how to spend. She has, as he alluded to, announced how some of this money will be allocated today in terms of the tram network, but it will be for the Mayor and the Combined Authority to decide how to use the balance of this funding for other projects in the region. But as always, I'm very happy to meet with him and with the Mayor to consider what options are available.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recognise the importance of assisting the city regions to boost the economy, but my Brigg and Immingham constituency basically covers the south bank of the Humber, which is a cluster of energy businesses in particular, of particular importance to the renewables sector. Could the Chief Secretary outline what resources are going to be made available for that area, in particular to support improved rail and connections, and also the A180, which gives access to the major port of Immingham?
The government recognises the strategic importance of his region to the UK economy. This will be reflected in the industrial strategy when it's published in the coming weeks, alongside our other plans. Importantly, to answer his specific question, announcements for funding outside of the City Transport for City Regions Fund being announced today will be made at the spending review next Wednesday.
Sharon Hodgson. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 20 years ago, when first standing for election, I was told to limit my ambitions with regard to campaigning to bring the Metro to Washington, but I persisted. Yeah. And thanks to this Labour government and the new North East Mayor, my ambition is going to be realised. Yeah. Does the Chief Secretary agree? Isn't that the difference that Labour and government can make? And promise made, promise delivered. Yeah.
Can I thank my honourable friend and congratulate her for her decades of campaigning for this project. Could I also welcome her suggestion that this is a Labour government delivering the change it's promised the country? But can I add to that and say it's also the difference brilliant Labour MPs can make in their constituencies, campaigning for change for their constituents. Many congratulations to her, and I hope that she'll be able to cut the ribbon when the lines are up and running.
Harriet Cross.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister talks about regional growth, but in North East Scotland, we only see cost and decline under this Labour government. Take the oil and gas sector. Labour policies costing almost 35,000 jobs by the end of this decade and £150 billion by 2050 in economic income. This UK-EU deal costing fishermen in Scotland £6 billion. The family farm tax, 2/3 of Scottish farmers will be impacted, 48% of farms halting their investments, which again hits our rural businesses who would be supplying them. Can the Minister name a single policy that this Labour government have introduced that actually benefits regional growth in North East Scotland?
I can reconfirm to the House, Mr Speaker, that this Labour government has delivered the largest real terms increase of funding for Scotland since devolution began. Might I just politely point her to the fact that the announcement today is about England, not Scotland, and further announcements on our commitment to delivering a new direction in Scotland will be coming next week in the spending review.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for his statement. I very much welcome the Labour government's delivery of £1 billion of investment for the Tees Valley, and in particular the £60 million for the third platform at Middlesbrough Station in my constituency. The money to increase the station's capacity, which I hope will mean increasing the number of direct trains to London, will complement the recent modernisation works completed when I began campaigning for that in 2018 with the then Middlesbrough Mayor, Dave Budd. There are many priorities I think the money could be invested in, including the repair of the iconic Transporter Bridge, taking buses back into control, a la Andy Burnham, and electrification of our rail line. So can he set out the importance of combined authority mayors consulting with local authorities and local communities and making best use and best value of this award?
I thank my honourable friend, congratulate him for securing this investment in his constituency. The key difference, of course, being that when he started campaigning for it, it was under a Conservative government, and now under a Labour government, we are delivering. To his question on working with combined authority mayors, he is right to point out that the most effective mayors of combined authorities in England are those that work in partnership with their local members of parliament to make sure that every part of their combined authority is heard and involved in that decision making. And I would encourage the Mayor of Teesside to do that.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. People in Cumbria, North Yorkshire and Durham are deeply concerned to see no mention at all in the Chancellor's announcement of the A66 dualling project, which is vital to boosting the economy of the North and, even more importantly, to saving lives. Not a penny for the northern two-thirds of the northwest of England. So will he allay Cumbria's fears and commit now to the A66 upgrade?
If I If I might say so, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think the member's slightly confused. The statement today is about devolved transport funding to mayors for intra-city transport. He's asking me questions on the broader spending in the Department for Transport, which will be announced in the spending review next Wednesday.
Liam Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I congratulate my right honourable friend on an announcement that is going to make a huge difference to delivering the industrial strategy for this country, something the Select Committee will report on later this week. I want to particularly commend him, though, for the £2.4 billion for East Birmingham Tram. This is something I've campaigned on for 15 years now. It is crucial in connecting the impoverished part of East Birmingham to the extraordinary new growth opportunities created by High Speed 2. Could he just confirm today that this is only the first piece of the tram and that in the future we will finish the job?
Can I thank my right honourable friend and congratulate him as well for securing this investment into Birmingham. I recently visited part of this development and saw the enormous potential that will come for his constituents in connecting Birmingham city centre with the new sports quarter. And I'm delighted to see how much private investment this investment is unlocking for his constituency and for the city. These funding allocations have been devolved to mayors. The announcements today are the announcements that mayors wish to make about some of the early allocations of this funding. And it will be for mayors to decide how they wish to allocate the rest of their funding. I would encourage him to work with the Mayor of the West of England, and I will help in any way that I can to be able to extend this and get the full benefit for his constituents.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I know the Minister is drawing his parameters rather tightly today, but can he give us at least a hint of what impact the Treasury's consideration anticipates for the defence investments in the regions resulting from the recent Strategic Defence Review, given the closeness with which his department was involved in the formulation of that review?
I thank the right honourable member for his question, recognising the significant increased investment in defence and security that this Labour government is making. He's asked for a hint. The only hint I can give him is that the answer will come next Wednesday at the spending review.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank my right honourable friend for listening to Steve Rotherham, the Liverpool City Region Metro Mayor, and Liverpool City Region MPs who jointly asked him for pretty much what he's announced for the region in today's statement. And can I thank him also, congratulate him on recognising the value that transport investment has for communities and for growth. In 2027, the new fleet of electric buses will arrive in my constituency as part of the expansion into the borough of Sefton. Can he confirm that today's announcement covers the improvement in grid connections and infrastructure for charging that will be necessary to take advantage of the very welcome transition to electric buses?
Can I thank my honourable friend and congratulate him and colleagues from the Liverpool City region for securing £1.6 billion of transport investment today. As he will remember, he and I were on a visit together looking at some of the potential for this money to be spent not long ago, including a roundtable with local employers and workers at the Everton Stadium. And it was great to be able to see out of the window of the Mayor of the Liverpool City region's office to see the potential that this investment will unlock in terms of housing, jobs and great opportunities for people in that area. He asked me about how the rest of this money will be spent on what sounds like very sensible infrastructure upgrades, but as he will know, that is a decision for the Mayor of the Liverpool City region.
The Chief Secretary's announcement on regional growth omitted very largely the South West region beyond Bristol. Will he therefore ensure that next Wednesday there is at least a nod to the region in which both he and I have our constituencies? And will he ensure that the signal sent by this government practically on day one to the South West in Canning improvements to A303 is corrected? Will he ensure that there is a nod at least to the much needed Westbury bypass? And can we please have just a little bit of investment in the poor country cousin of the rail network in this country, which is the West of England line?
I thank the honourable member for his question. Of course, the announcement today is funding for combined authority mayors, which is why the West of England Combined Authority mayor has received £2/3 of £1 billion of transport investment today for areas that are part of that boundary. We are, though, still committed to investing in each part and every part of Britain. The details of that will come out in the spending review next Wednesday. But I might also just remind him that the government has said to other parts of the country that if they can get together and agree a combined authority mayoralty, that we will continue to support them in the same way that we're supporting the existing mayors that we have in the UK. And it will be for local leaders in the region that he and I come from to decide how best to collaborate on these issues going forward.
John Trickett.
Well, it's more than 30 years since I was the leader of the Leeds and did the first proposal for a rapid transit system in that area in West Yorkshire. So I welcome today's announcement, though it's going to be a couple of years before the building starts. But during the 14 years of the Tory government, the average amount of money per head spent in London was 3 times larger than the amount of money spent per head on transport in Yorkshire. Of course, we want a successful capital city, but it's left the coalfield communities, which I now represent, really in difficulty with low investment, low productivity. Our salaries are only £12,500 per head, less than is received for the average in the north of London. Can the Minister please assure the House that we'll be looking again at funding the redevelopment, regeneration of coalfield communities in the near future?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question and campaigning over many years. As the Chancellor set out today in her speech in relation to this funding for city regions, but also in our review of the Green Book, we are purposefully tilting funding towards the North and the Midlands after many, many years of losing out in those areas, with a tendency for money to come more into London and the South East. London and the South East are still important, but we recognise the historic injustice around the distribution of investment across the country, whether it's low ratios in the East Midlands, low funding in the South West, or indeed decades of being looked over in the North. That's why this announcement today is really important. And just to reassure him, I understand from the Mayor that work will begin on the projects announced today in 2028, with an ambition for first services to be available from the mid-2030s.
Tom Morrison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the news about Metrolink coming to Stockport. This is an absolute tribute to all those residents, businesses and organisations that fought tirelessly to get this result. And can I also thank Councillor Mark Hunter, the former leader of Stockport Council and the former MP for Cheadle, who made it his life's work to get this result today. The Minister will know that we're expecting a train station in Cheadle very soon, which is adapted for the Metro, which will be adapted for the Metrolink. Can the Minister confirm that when Metrolink comes to Stockport, that it will come through Cheadle as well?
I thank the honourable member for his question. One of the many benefits of the funding announced today for city regions is the positive effect it will have for communities along these transport lines and for people that travel in and out of the city regions. This may be funding for transport in particular places, but I hope the benefit will be felt widely as he suggests. It will be for the Mayor to decide the programming of the delivery of these projects, but I think he makes a strong case for Cheadle, and I'm sure he'll be able to raise that with the Mayor in due course.
Jo White.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome the Minister's statement that there's a shift from focusing funding on the easy-to-deliver areas in the London and the South, and a shift to the Midlands and the North, where the constituencies like mine are the left-behind areas. And I very much welcome that local mayors will be taking that decision. Now, £2 billion has been given to my mayor to invest in the East Midlands, and that's absolutely welcome. I welcome the Trent Arc proposal, but I also welcome the fact, the freedom that she's got to spend money in our area, such as in Badenoch, and I'm already in discussions with her about how that money can be best spent. My ask of the Minister is that that money can be used to help deliver STEP in Badenoch, which will change lives, create jobs, and put us on the energy-efficient agenda that we need for the future.
Chief Secretary.
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question and her vociferous campaigning to ensure that we are delivering on our promises to deliver investment to left-behind areas across the country after years of failed promises of levelling up from the Conservative Party opposite. It's right that we're finding that money and investing it in her community. One important point to make, though, is, of course, this is not the total amount of funding that the government is putting into her community. This is just transport funding devolved to the mayoral combined authority. There will be further announcements in the coming weeks in relation to energy infrastructure, industrial policy, skills, housing and public services, where we will be able to show very, very clearly the difference that a Labour government is making, working in partnership with brilliant Labour MPs like herself, to deliver change that people voted for.
Sammy Wilson.
Deputy Speaker, the Minister is right in stating that modern growth relies on dynamic, interconnected regions and that stronger transport links are vital for businesses to expand their markets for goods and services. But while he has announced £15.6 billion into improving transport links in other parts of the United Kingdom, his government today is spending £140 million on creating a border post in my constituency, which disrupts the transport links between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, costing businesses, slowing transport and indeed dissuading some businesses to even supply to Northern Ireland. What is he going to do to improve the transport links between Northern Ireland and Great Britain for logistics, which currently, because of the disruption, is slowing growth and causing businesses to fail?
The honourable member raises some important points which my colleagues from the Department for Transport will no doubt have heard, and I'm sure he's talking to them about the delivery of that particular project. I would just say that this government has put record investment into Northern Ireland. And we have reset the relationship, because under the last government there wasn't even any conversation about Northern Ireland, whereas now I'm in frequent communications with the Northern Ireland Executive, who, might I say, of all of my colleagues that I've had to negotiate in the spending review, are the toughest people that I've had to speak with. And this Labour government will be delivering a good deal for Northern Ireland, as it will be for every nation and region of the country.
Anna Dixon.
And I'd really like to thank the Chief Secretary and the Chancellor for delivering historic investment which will make a reality of West Yorkshire Tracy Brabin's plans for an integrated transport network, which is now going to be called the Weaver Network, I understand, to compete with the B Network on the other side of the Pennines. And I've been actively campaigning for that along with other West Yorkshire MPs. Can he confirm that it includes funding for a new bus station in Bradford? And also agree with me that these investments the government is making in the transport infrastructure in the north will improve connectivity for communities like those in the Shipley area and beyond, bringing social, environmental as well as economic benefit.
Can I congratulate my honourable friend for working so positively with the Mayor for West Yorkshire to secure this historic amount of investment into her community. She asked me specifically if there'll be new bus stations as part of the announcement, and I understand from Tracy Brabin, the Mayor of West Yorkshire, that there will be new bus stations at Bradford and Wakefield, as well as building out the West Yorkshire mass transit system. And I understand from these numbers there's still some more to spend, and I'm sure she'll be in touch with the Mayor in due course on that very matter.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm disappointed that there are no SNP members here, because I actually have to take issue with who's here from the Scottish National Party? Nobody. I have to take issue with the Chief Secretary, because economic growth in any part of the United Kingdom doesn't just affect England, it affects all of the United Kingdom. And I'm sure if they were here, their constituents, like mine in Edinburgh West, would want to know what consequential implications does he anticipate for Scotland. Specifically, will there be Barnett consequentials for this investment today?
The honourable member is encouraging me to get ahead of this statement and answer questions about the spending review next week. All I can say for now is that this Labour government is investing in every nation and region of the country. We are delivering on the promise of change in Scotland, where we know we need a new direction. She rightly alludes to the fact of the absence of the SNP in the House today, and might I say the absence of SNP leadership in Holyrood. I think the election next year, we've got an example to show how two Labour governments can deliver real change for people in Scotland, which will be underpinned by the significant investment we'll be announcing next week in the spending review.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement today from the Minister, his comments on the Green Book and, of course, the nearly £1.8 billion investment for the North East. We know that growth and opportunity should never just be for some areas, but it needs to be felt in every single part of the country, and this is a clear demonstration from this government that we understand that. Can I please ask the Minister whether this approach will also shape future infrastructure decisions, such as the road investment strategy, where projects such as the Moor Farm roundabout upgrade would have the potential to unleash growth in my Cramlington and Killingworth constituency?
Can I thank my honourable friend for championing jobs and livelihoods in her constituency and the region, and for welcoming the historic £1.8 billion of investment announced today for transport infrastructure. As she rightly alludes to, the announcement today is about transport infrastructure, but the government is doing much more to improve lives, wages and communities in every part of the country. And we'll be setting out further information in the coming weeks in relation to other types of infrastructure, but also how through the industrial strategy we're supporting skills and jobs and training opportunities for people so they can get better jobs and better pay, noting, of course, that the transport funding announced today will serve one of the largest advanced manufacturing zones in the United Kingdom, which will be great news for her constituents, but also great news for the country.
Anne Davies.
Fawr, Madam Dirprwy Llyfarydd. Following on from the HS2, there is a new chapter in the Great Welsh Train Robbery. And you know where this is going, I'm sure. The East-West Railway project between Oxford and Cambridgeshire has been classified as an English and Wales project. I've lived in Wales all my life, and I've got to tell you, it's nowhere near the Welsh border. The last time I looked, neither of them were anywhere near Wales. Honestly, can the Minister or the Chief Secretary explain why the Treasury has made this farcical decision again to deny Wales millions of pounds in funding which we desperately need to transform our dilapidated, crumbling rail network?
I think the honourable member and I can agree on one important thing, which was the failed promises of the last Conservative government, who made decisions that undercut investment in Wales and deprioritised Wales. She will know that we have a brilliant group of Labour MPs now representing Wales who have been making their case strongly for this government to invest in Wales, and we'll be setting out further details of that investment at the spending review next week.
Ruth Cadbury.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As Transport Committee Chair, this announcement is hugely welcome. These rail and mass transit schemes are going to link communities, generate growth and cut pollution and carbon emissions. But in the context of finishing the job that was mentioned earlier, can we hope that before too long there will be an announcement or a similar announcement about linking northern cities with the southeast through the HS2 project that is currently stalled?
Can I thank my honourable friend for her excellent work as chair of the Transport Select Committee, which has shown on a cross-party basis why the announcements we make today are good for the economy, good for jobs and good for constituencies across the United Kingdom. She's encouraging me to answer questions in relation to statements that we made next week. All I can say at this stage, I'm afraid, is there's not long to go.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chief Secretary says that the West of England funding will increase services between Bristol City Centre and Brabazon. I've been pressing ministers to extend the funding for half-hourly trains at Yate, which are currently due to end next year, and the service is also vital to provide a service to the new Charfield station, which is due to open in 2027. Both places are, of course, in the city region. So will this funding support those services or even improve them? Or is this more about the city than the region?
Can I thank the honourable member for her question and I think welcoming the nearly £1 billion of investment in transport for the West of England, which we know is a thriving part of the country, that with the right investment in affordable housing, clean, renewable transport that works on time and is affordable for people to use, will be great for people living in her and my constituency, quite frankly, but also great for the country. One particular point just to note is that the funding announced today is capital investment, not day-to-day spending. There'll be further announcements in due course about issues that she's asked about in terms of bus subsidy or rail subsidy, which will be announced by the Department for Transport in the coming weeks. But we are absolutely committed to supporting funding within regional combined authorities. This is not about particular places. This is why we've given this money to mayors who will work with members of Parliament like myself and herself to make sure we're delivering for the West of England and delivering for the country.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I note that York didn't feature in the Chief Secretary's statement today. However, I also recognise the outstanding connectivity of York. However, today is about creating jobs, and adjacent to York Station, the York Central development will create 12,500 jobs, a gateway of the economy of the North. Will he ensure that there is proper investment in York Central to ensure that we unlock those jobs and give people in my city and the region the opportunities that they deserve?
I thank my honourable friend for welcoming this historic level of funding today in transport infrastructure. As she will know, this is a devolved pot of money to regional mayors to decide how to spend. And so I can't answer the question for her, but would encourage her to talk to the mayor about the opportunities in her constituency.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement today, giving money out to mayors to fix transport. There's nothing to disagree with there. Kent, which is, as he knows, the UK's strategic corridor to Europe, asked for a mayor recently and was rebuffed. So without a mayor, when will Kent get its money?
The government will be investing in every nation and region across the country. Further details will be published at the spending review next week. The announcements today are a particular investment in city regions with mayors, because we think that is an important driver for growth within those areas, but for also the wider regions in which they sit. I recognise the importance of his region to the country, and further announcements will be coming in due course.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Minister's announcement today. It's quite wonderful to hear MPs buzzing with the investment that's going to be in their constituencies, especially after 14 years of the Tory neglect and the short-term insufficient funding that they used to give constituencies. Can the Minister reassure the House that when the spending review comes next week, that London will be recognised to the economic empowerment that it gives to the country, and that there'll be a different attitude to London spending that will help with infrastructure projects such as the DLR and Thamesmead extension?
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question, and rightly recognising the importance of the capital city to our country, which has been at the centre of our engine of growth for many, many years. Also to allude to the fact that we've got a brilliant Labour mayor in Sadiq Khan in London, who strongly makes the case for investment in the capital. We will be making further announcements next week, which will bolster and strengthen London and Sadiq's leadership in London to deliver for the whole country.
Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chief Secretary will know the benefits of the Compton-Wellington Station project would bring tens of thousands of people to the city metro region, Cardiff, Bristol, Exeter corridor, and thanks to a cost-benefit ratio of almost 4-to-1. Will he acknowledge the strength of the case for that project, as set out in the letter he received from his honourable friends for Weston-super-Mare, for North Somerset, for Exeter, from myself, and from the honourable member for Honiton and Sidmouth?
Can I thank the honourable member for his campaigning and welcoming the news of historic levels of investment into the west of England for transport today. The best use of this money is to make sure not just that we're delivering infrastructure within our combined authorities, but that it unlocks opportunities for broader spending decisions on intercity transport, heavy rail, road investment, new house building, industrial policy spending. The review of the Green Book has been looking at this. Further details will be published next week, but I'm very confident that we're going to be able to unlock opportunities for areas outside of the combined authorities, but making a stronger case for doing so because of the investment that we're making today.
Sarah Coombs.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this government's £2.5 billion investment into the West Midlands, which will allow our Mayor Richard Parker to make strategic decisions, such as the extension of the tram, which is going to allow my constituents in West Brom to get to East Birmingham, which is fantastic. And does he agree with me that this is going to drive growth, not just in Birmingham, but also in the Black Country and the entire West Midlands?
Can I thank my honourable friend for welcoming this historic level of funding from a Labour government to our brilliant Labour mayor in the West Midlands, and noting, of course, that this investment is not just into particular tracks of railway or bus facilities in certain places, but is an opportunity for people that live and work in and around the region, creating great opportunities for people and delivering on the mayor's priority that everyone should benefit from the economic growth that will come as a consequence of this investment. previously lobbying a Conservative government that failed to deliver, and now a Labour mayor working with a Labour government to deliver these projects.
Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome today the news that the tram is finally coming to Stockport. I've also warmly welcomed this announcement every time it's been made previously, so I'm delighted that the Chief Secretary is going to deliver it. My honourable friend, the member for Cheadle, rightly acknowledges the sterling campaigning that's been done by businesses, residents and indeed elected politicians over many, many years. And that's how we get things done in Greater Manchester on a cross-party basis. Can the Chief Secretary assure my local authority colleagues from Stockport Council that the money's ready to go, because they are keen as mustard to crack on and deliver this project so that we can get on with the next phase, which is tram train to Markle, so my Hazel Grove residents will really benefit.
Can I thank the honourable member for her question. The funding announced today is in the spending review timeframe, so this will be available from 2026-27 onwards, whilst they continue to spend the money that we allocated at the budget last year for this fiscal year. The difference, as I'm sure she's now experiencing, is that when false promises have been made in the past and never delivered, we are all exasperated by the fact that announcements are made by politicians and spades never get into the ground. Not only have we found the money and allocated it now because of the decisions that the Chancellor has taken, she will see spades into the ground and improve transport in her community for real, as opposed to the false promises of the parties opposite.
Florence Eshelome.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome my right honourable friend's announcement to make sure we see that investment right across the country. I just wanted to build on my colleague, the honourable the member for Brent East's question in terms of the support for London. I'm sure the Chief Secretary will recognise that transport infrastructure in London is vital to help our young people starting on a career, vulnerable communities moving around, and in London we have 3 big transport infrastructure projects: Bakerloo Line Extension, the DLR to Thameslink, and the West London Orbital, backed by London boroughs, the mayors, businesses and TfL. They need additional funding. So the Chief Secretary highlights what he said in terms of regional plan will be hardwired into the spending review going forward, and that will include London.
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question and her excellent work on the Select Committee looking at these and related issues. She's right, of course, to point to the success of London and the potential for future success through investment in London. As the Chancellor said today, we are tilting investment to parts of the country that have missed out for many, many years. But we know by working with mayors like Sadiq Khan in London, working with private capital and other investors, we can also deliver for places as important as London as the capital city for our country. We know there's plenty of opportunity to be doing that, and we'll be able to set out further details on that in due course.
Sian Berry.
Deputy Speaker, in the city of Brighton and Hove, my constituents tell me they need more and cleaner buses, more reliable trains and stations without barriers to people with children, older people and disabled people. So, can the Chief Secretary assure me that the wider review of Treasury rules will mean great value projects like this get prioritised in the South East, and that our transport investment doesn't just consist of major unnecessary road building and expanded international airports that won't help people's daily lives?
I think the honourable member makes an important point about people's lived experience of these types of policy announcements. What we're trying to achieve is to make it easier for people to use affordable, reliable public transport that's better for the environment, easier for them to use to get about for their day-to-day lives. We see that a lot in places like London in the past. Other places around the country have looked on in envy. The announcement today will mean that that's available to many, many people across the country. Announcements on funding for areas that do not have combined authority mayors will also be coming, but that will be announced next week at the spending review.
Perrin Moon.
Whereas, Madam Deputy Speaker, I thoroughly welcome the Treasury's Green Book review because the current funding formulae do not reflect the true cost of delivering services in remote coastal areas like Cornwall. They do not account for the scattered nature of deprivation, or the costs associated with seasonal surge in demand, or costs associated with the influx of retirees, or higher per capita costs of transport, waste collection, coastal protection and emergency response during the holiday season. They simply do not reflect the lived experience of people in Camberwell, Maynooth and Hale and across Cornwall, despite our massive economic potential. Can the Chief Secretary assure constituents in remote coastal communities like Cornwall that there will be specific changes to reflect our specific remote coastal challenges?
Can I thank my honourable friend and his wider group of Labour members from Cornwall who have campaigned vociferously on the Green Book, which may seem technical, but for people at home is really important because it alludes to all of the issues that he points out, not least because in the past government has made decisions about particular projects as opposed to particular places. And that means that we can't unlock the potential for growth and better livelihoods because of a failure of applying this Green Book and its rules. The Chancellor announced today that the Green Book update will be published next week at the spending review, but I can give him the guarantee today that the detail of that, when it is published, will show that this government will look much more widely at how spending across government lifts the potential of places to deliver better jobs, better wages for people and more secure communities.
Caroline Burden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chief Secretary rightly says that stronger transport links are crucial for creating opportunities for jobs and economic growth, and it's great to see so many happy Labour MPs in the Chamber. I heard what the Minister said to my honourable friend about being patient, but it does feel like the government, by trailing the spending review with this announcement, is prioritising spending on urban areas, and in particular those with many fine Labour MPs. So can he assure me and my constituents in South Devon that the Treasury will remember next week that the West Country does not end at Bristol, and many would say it actually starts there?
I thank the honourable member for her question. As I've alluded to many times today, this government is committed to investing in every region and nation of the country. Today's announcement is about city regions and city region transport, but the spending review next week will show how this government is delivering for people irrespective of where they live.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Historically, transport in the Midlands has been underfunded, and today's announcement is a welcome turn of the tide. Many Birmingham City fans in my constituency will also strongly welcome the Metro extension, and this feels like a good opportunity to also congratulate the Blues on their record-setting, promotion-winning season. This is yet more good news. We are also campaigning for upgrades to the Cross-City line to make the most of this new investment, in particular the Kings Norton station works. Will the Minister confirm that both he and Transport colleagues remain open to constructive representations so that we can finally make this important project happen?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his campaigning for his constituency and welcoming this historic level of funding of £2.4 billion today for the West Midlands. He asked me about future projects. The good news is that the Mayor of the West Midlands hasn't spent all of this money yet, so there is definitely potential for lobbying him on how he might wish to spend the rest of that money in due course, and anything I can do to help, I'll be glad to do so.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The statement says stronger transport links are crucial. To that extent, the Department of Transport has already paid through the Union Connectivity Fund for a feasibility study on the reopening of the Lisburn-Antrim rail line, which would actually connect the Belfast International Airport in my constituency. Unfortunately, Madam Deputy Speaker, they've already told me they can't allocate funding until the next spending review is announced, so they've beaten the Chief Secretary to that answer. So in case of that, could I actually ask them, of the 15.6 billion that has been allocated today, that's roughly about 450 million Barnett consequential. Would he agree with me that actually investment in that Lisburn-Antrim Belfast International line would be a good investment in Northern Ireland Railways?
The honourable member rightly alludes to the fact that because the Labour government is increasing investment here in Westminster for the whole country, the nations of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland benefit both through Barnett and direct spending from this government to make sure we're investing in every nation and region of the country. We've already seen significant amounts of funding, I think the highest level of funding since devolution began into Northern Ireland as well as Scotland and Wales. Further details will be published next week at the spending review.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've been raging in the East Midlands for over a decade against the inequality that has left our region at the very bottom when it comes to spending on transport per person. And it has taken a Labour government to start to put that right and begin to unlock the economic potential and raise living standards. Would he agree that this represents a considerable achievement for our Mayor, Claire Ward, and shows that after years in the pit stop, the regions are finally being given the green light to grow?
Can I thank my honourable friend for welcoming the £2 billion of investment announced today for the East Midlands. I've been on a number of visits to her region, including with our brilliant Labour Mayor, Claire Ward, who has made a very strong case for the investment being announced today. It shows the difference a Labour Mayor can make. But can I also pay tribute to her and her colleagues from her regional group, who campaign as vociferously here as Claire Ward does from her mayoral office in the East Midlands.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers to all the questions, and the regional growth is imperative for the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and I'm pleased that the Minister is expanding the horizons for areas considered for further funding. I'm also very pleased to announce in the Chamber today that a previous scheme initiated by the shadow government and delivered within the time of this government for the Ards North Down Local Council, the Queen's Parade development. It was one of the regional other schemes that were delivered, and £9.8 million was set aside by Westminster for that project. So it was signed, it was sealed, and that project is going ahead. Well, probably estimates that some £70 million of regeneration will come off the back of that. So whenever the government spends money here, be assured that the benefits and the rollout are significant. So can I ask the Minister, because he's also hinted at some other possibilities of other monies coming through, what commitment can the Minister give to ensuring that coastal communities across all of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland can adapt and apply to schemes similar to improve beauty, tourist attraction of all our coastal towns and centres? Thank you so much.
Can I thank the honourable member for continuing his work campaigning for Strangford and Northern Ireland in general. As he knows, details of funding will be announced from the Northern Ireland Executive next week at the spending review, building on the back of significant increased investment. And he's right, investment in transport projects opens up opportunities for new housing, new jobs and new livelihoods. And I recognise that the Northern Irish economy is one of the best performing parts of the United Kingdom, and we want to continue to support that in the future.
James Frith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a pleasure to hear my honourable friend refer to Bury North in his statement, and I welcome the investment in Bury North for trams and buses, hot on the heels of vital school and hospital funding only announced this week. New buses, new tram stops are about connecting people and places to opportunity, and that opportunity can help rid us of poverty. Today's announcement is concerned with improving journeys to work and getting on in life, but does he agree that it is only by growing the economy that we will tackle child poverty, which is now at a shameful 42% in Bury North, and improve our children's journey through life?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his campaigning for Bury and for welcoming the investment today. He points to two things which I think is really important. One, why is this actually happening now? Because of the decisions of a Labour government, unlike the failed promises of the Conservative Party in the past. And his second question is about child poverty. This government, as he knows, is committed to tackling child poverty, and the Child Poverty Task Force will report in due course. But he will know that for families who are experiencing child poverty, the best lever to alleviate them from that situation is work, and to help parents who are able to and want to be in work. And so investment in affordable, reliable public transport, alongside our important investment in childcare, support at school in the early years, will mean that we're not just giving people false promises as they had in the past, but we're giving them a path to a future where they know that they can be part of the success that we're setting up the country to deliver.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's been good to hear so much talked about left behind communities today, but I've always hated that phrase because my community wasn't left behind under the last government. It was willfully abandoned under the last government. So the £1.8 billion to the North East Combined Authority region is hugely welcome. And I welcome the campaigning by my honourable friend for the extension to Washington and the world-class Angel network that is going to be built by our MP Kim McGuinness. But does he agree with me that it makes no sense to have a fantastic new train line and fantastic new trains running on it if it has to run under a crumbling flyover in the middle of Gateshead and through an interchange that requires work? And will he work with me and the Mayor of the North East to deliver these additional critical infrastructure projects for the North East?
My honourable friend is showing what brilliant Labour MPs can achieve through continuous campaigning and lobbying. He has made the case for his constituency very strongly, which of course will benefit from these record levels of investment today. But I know he wishes for more, and further details will be coming next week in the spending review.
Natasha Irons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this government's funded commitment to making every community across this country better off after the failed promises of the previous government? Now, as an MP for an Outer London constituency with the oldest trams in the country and pockets of deprivation, what reassurance can he give me and my constituents in Croydon East that next week's spending review will recognise the contribution London makes to our national economy and that it will provide investment in communities like mine who were failed by the previous government?
Can I thank my honourable friend for making an important case for the transport infrastructure that her constituents rely on. And she makes the case in a way that's very similar, not just for her constituency in London and Greater London, but also for other parts of the country, which is that if you're creating opportunities for people, they need to be able to get to them and they need to be made available to them. That's what the government is doing by investing in every nation and region across the United Kingdom, including in London. And I look forward to further announcements in the spending review that will help enable the promise of change that she and this government made to her constituents.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I genuinely welcome the significant investment that the Chief Secretary has been able to announce into the city regions around our country. However, in places like Stoke-on-Trent, which don't have a combined authority and realistically aren't going to have one for many years to come, the aspiration that my constituents have for significant growth investment is no different to other parts of the West Midlands. They would like to see the reinstatement of number 40 bus from Mount Pleasant to Hanley. They would like to see the lifts installed at Longton train station to make it accessible. And while I have absolute faith that the Chief Secretary is aware of these nuances between mayoral and non-mayoral areas, could he give a commitment today that the level of investment in the non-mayoral areas will match the investment in the mayoral areas when those announcements are made next week in the comprehensive spending review? And could he give a little indication of what mechanisms will be used to deliver that money into those communities? Because with a fragmented local government base, it's quite easy for this money to stick around in pots and not be spent because people can't agree.
Can I thank my honourable friend for making the case for his constituency? As he's alluded to, the announcements today are for areas with combined authority mayors. The government has made an offer to other parts of the country if they can get together and agree to have their own combined authority mayor to be able to benefit from these types of announcements in the future. But for those areas that do not have a mayor, this Labour government is as committed to the people in those communities as we are to any other community across the country. We've already significantly increased funding through the autumn budget 2024, including in, for example, road maintenance and potholes, maintaining a bus fare cap, supporting the extension of bus services, as he's alluded to. We'll continue to support those communities, and further details will be announced next week in the spending review.
Andy McNair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, because I usually welcome these investments that will free up the great potential of the North, or at least be part of it. And the Green Book Review will, of course, create the conditions whereby which we can unleash the rest of the potential in left-behind areas, left-behind small towns like those in Rossendale and Darwin. But, of course, as my colleague said, we are concerned in non-mayoral authorities that we want to see that similar level of investment. So what reassurance can you give to people of Lancashire that we are going to see the similar sort of benefits of growth that the city regions are enjoying now?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his continuous campaigning for his constituency? And I think I'm right in saying that every time I've seen him in the House, he's mentioned the Green Book Review to me and has been one of our most forthright campaigners to make sure that we are building the rules and frameworks to deliver investment to every part of the country. As the Chancellor announced today, we'll be updating the Green Book and publishing the outcomes of this consultation next Wednesday. He'll have to wait, I'm afraid, a few days for the detail, but I think he will be pleased with where we have gotten to.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the huge investment into the North East delivered under this government. For a long time, rural Northumberland was ignored and held in contempt by the party opposite, so can I encourage the Chief Secretary to reflect on the growth opportunities in the rural North East, to communicate that to devolved leaders, and to recognise the development and growth opportunities that rural communities offer to our economy?
Can I thank my honourable friend for the campaigning that he undertakes for his constituents and for rural communities. He touches on an important point, which is the funding that we've made available to combined authority mayors today is for the combined authority, but also for the wider region. And so whilst it's for mayors to decide how to spend the money we've given them, we do encourage them to make sure that people, irrespective of whether they live in a city, a town or a rural community, can benefit from the opportunities of the investment today. And I know he'll work with his mayor to ensure that's delivered.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank my right honourable friend for listening so carefully to the representations of our Tees Valley Labour MPs and delivering so fulsomely on the biggest transport settlement for our region. There's enough money here to deliver a safe crossing over the A689 in Wynyard, buses in Port Clarence, more trains in Billingham and the restoration of our much-loved transporter bridge. But can I ask him, will he assure me that there will be sufficient governance in place to ensure that every penny is spent on the priorities of local people and not funnelled into the purses of property developers, which was a concern in Teesside under the previous Conservative government?
Can I thank my honourable friend, Madam Deputy Speaker, for his question and rightly raising the point that the best combined authority mayors are those that work with members of parliament within their combined authority and their respective communities to ensure that money is being spent in the best way to meet the needs of those local communities. As he knows, there are measures in place in Whitehall to supervise spending from combined authority mayors and to audit where appropriate, with further measures coming in due course. But he is right to welcome this historic level of funding into his constituency and his region, and we look forward to it being spent well on his constituents' priorities.
James Nash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the chair of the East Midlands APPG, may I put on record my thanks to the Chancellor and to the Chief Secretary of the Treasury for their recent engagement about the potential of our region, which has resulted in the significant £2 billion investment announcement today. The East Midlands has been massively underfunded and underinvested in as a region, as the data consistently shows. And so can I welcome the Treasury's commitment to changing how the government approaches and evaluates the case for investing in regions, and ask the Minister whether there will be further positive announcements for the wider East Midlands region at the Comprehensive Spending Review and Industrial Strategy announcements later this month.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his leadership of the all-party group for the East Midlands and alongside his colleagues and the Mayor for making such a powerful case for investment in his region. As he alludes to, there will be further announcements at the spending review next week in the infrastructure strategy and the industrial strategy, which will show how this Labour government is investing in regions such as his to make sure that we can improve the life chances of people irrespective of where they choose to live or work.
Conor Naismith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the announcements today which reflect a government finally willing to match rhetoric with actions when it comes to investment in the North and the Midlands? The Network North so-called plan announced under the Tories was pitched as an attempt to compensate northern communities for the loss of HS2, and I have to say that my constituents were somewhat surprised that there was not a single mention of Cheshire in that so-called plan. So what assurance can my right honourable friend give me that, as well as city regions, towns outside the current mayoral areas will see the benefits of crucial infrastructure investments?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question, and rightly to be pointing to the frustration of his constituents at the failed promises of the previous Conservative government. The difference that this Labour government is making, working with him as a brilliant Labour MP in his constituency, is being able to change the fiscal rules, to be able to tax the wealthiest, as the Chancellor did at the budget last year, and to be able to invest that money into transport across the country, which will be of benefit to those in those combined authorities, but also in the broader travel to work region. Further announcements for towns and villages will be made next week at the spending review.
Paul Wall.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Mellor Bus's factory in Rochdale was the perfect place for the Chancellor to unveil this £15 billion investment in transport infrastructure today, and also to give a first taste of the change to the Green Book and the Treasury rules that have for too long held back places in the North and the Midlands from getting their fair share of transport money. Does he agree with me that investment in public transport is also investment in local manufacturers like Mellor, and also that this shows what a difference a Labour MP working with a Labour Mayor and a Labour government can deliver the change that people voted for last year?
Can I thank my honourable friend, who's a brilliant campaigner for his constituents in Rochdale, and for welcoming this historic level of funding to his community today. As he's alluded to, the Chancellor was able to make the announcements in Rochdale today, but also to show that the investments that we've announced today is not just investments in track and bus stops and trains, but it's investments in jobs and livelihoods and businesses across the United Kingdom being able to help us deliver this renewal for Britain as a consequence of our investment being announced today.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is so refreshing after 14 years of talking about delivering for the North that this Labour government is just delivering for the North. I'm a passionate believer in devolution, but devolution must come with accountability. Can the Chief Secretary of the Treasury inform me about what steps we can take to ensure that the £1 billion we've just agreed for Tees Valley gets to every part of that region, most importantly to Hartlepool?
Can I thank my honourable friend, who's a brilliant champion for his constituents in Hartlepool, and for recognising the historic levels of investment this Labour government is delivering off the back of brilliant campaigning from colleagues such as him and others in the region. The best combined authority mayors are those that work with their members of parliament and all of the communities they represent. I know that he will be making the case to the mayor that is in his region. Checks and balances are in place in government to ensure that that's done in the best way, and we'll continue to work with him to make sure that this investment under a Labour government is delivering on the priorities of people in his constituency.
Antonia Vance.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For so long, Tipton, Wednesbury, Coseley, the Black Country, the whole of the West Midlands has been an afterthought. Now our Mayor, Richard Parker, and the West Midlands Combined Authority will have £2.5 billion for transport to unlock desperately needed good jobs and growth across our cities and towns. And I hope that the Mayor will look favourably on our need for a new roundabout at Great Bridge to get the traffic flowing to our factories and to our jobs as we seek the economic growth we are prioritising. Does the Minister share my view that today's statement starts to put right decades of underinvestment in the West Midlands?
Can I thank my honourable friend for welcoming this historic level of funding into transport today, which she rightly alludes to is fixing historic failures that have been promised by other parties over many, many years. She's also right to point to the fact that these transport investments unlock jobs and opportunities for people in the broader region, including in respect of her area for sports and leisure and creative arts opportunities as well. I know that she'll work closely with our brilliant Labour Mayor for the West Midlands to make sure this money is spent on the people's priorities.
Jazz Athwell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And just to build on the point made by my honourable friend, the member for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green, can the Minister confirm that alongside the investments around today, London too will receive support to develop its infrastructure? Broadmead Bridge still is closed. Central Line is creaking at the seams. And that the spending review next week will also enable our capital to unlock the housing it so desperately needs and remain London to be a world-leading city.
Can I thank my honourable friend? London is and continues to be a crucial engine for growth for the whole country and important to us all as our capital city. I know that he'll continue to work with our brilliant Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan to make sure that investment is tackling the problems that he has raised.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the recognition from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. The investment in public transport infrastructure and improved services open opportunities to work. And I contrast that with my constituency, which is part of the Glasgow City region, which is experiencing cuts to bus services and cuts to rail services, which are proving much a big barrier to people getting involved, both in working opportunities as well as social activity. So will he join me in making representation to the Scottish Government that at least some of the record settlement that this Government has passed to Holywood is spent on transport infrastructure?
Can I thank my honourable friend for making the case for her constituency? And she's right that we have a shared view that investment in public transport is important for people's livelihoods and how they're able to live and enjoy the communities in which they live in. And unfortunately, the SNP government continues to fail to deliver on its promises, whereas in England today, we're able to show the difference that a Labour government can make. And I hope in the future, a Labour government in Westminster and a Labour government in Scotland will show what a new direction can mean for people across Scotland and in her constituency.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you. As the Shadow Chief Secretary was comparing the records of our governments earlier, I was reminded of that moment when they made all these transport announcements, and it turned out that half of them had been delivered already, and the other half were cancelled within 24 hours, and that included the Leamside line in the North East. So I'm absolutely delighted for my honourable friend, the member for Washington and Gateshead South, that after 20 years of campaigning, she's secured that, and it's also great for growth generally in the North East. But as a champion for my own community, I'm going to keep banging the drum for the Weardale Railway Line and the West Auckland Bypass, and they will not be funded through this funding settlement. So my question is this going to be the only transport infrastructure spending this side of the next general election, or will there be future rounds that we can bid for?
Can I thank my honourable friend for campaigning so well for his constituent and for welcoming the historic level of funding today. He asked whether there'll be other funding outside of the announcement today for city region mayors for infrastructure and other capital projects. The answer to that is yes, and the details will come in the spending review next week.
Jonathan Davies.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I hugely welcome the £2 billion investment in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, which has been announced today, because the East Midlands has consistently been at the bottom of the tables when it comes to the funding for public transport. I was very pleased to welcome representatives from Arriva, Stagecoach, Trent Barton and TM Travel. Those bus companies came to Parliament yesterday to meet with Derbyshire MPs, and I know Mayor Claire Ward will put this money that's coming into the region to good use with those companies. So can the Chief Secretary tell me how will this investment help unlock opportunities in the region and help us meet our net zero ambitions? And can I also not encourage him not to lose sight of the benefit of Midland mainline electrification, which I know is not a question for today, but it is very important to people in Derbyshire?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his brilliant work lobbying on behalf of his constituents and the East Midlands, and for welcoming this historic level of funding for transport today. He's right to point out the fact that the funding today isn't just about transport infrastructure, it's about the communities in which people live and the livelihoods and opportunities that they have for them and their family. And I know that he'll continue to work hard with our brilliant Mayor Claire Ward in the East Midlands to turn these numbers today into the stories that really matter for people in his constituency and across the East Midlands.
And the last question on this statement, Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I welcome transport investment that's really needed in those city regions that spreads the wealth out. Cornwall, of course, also has ambitious transport plans, but doesn't have a large city region for 175 miles. It's very difficult to get public transport to our airport or a bus direct to our one acute hospital. And I'm campaigning for a freight rail link for Falmouth. So I'm heartened to hear there will be more transport announcements in the spending review. Could the Chief Secretary of the Treasury confirm that investment will go further down the southwest? And also, on investment more widely, the Chief Secretary has talked about the National Wealth Fund, and we know that they are dealing in early stage project development support with areas of the country. Could the Chief Secretary confirm that those talks will go wider than just the city regions, and places like Cornwall that have political and business partnerships and a strong growth plan will be considered by the National Wealth Fund?
Can I thank my honourable friend for championing Cornwall and the opportunities that Cornwall presents to the country? She makes a strong case alongside her colleagues in Cornwall for renewable energy, for mining, for other important parts of our industrial strategy, and she knows and makes the case frequently that those opportunities will only be made available to people if they're able to afford to live in places like Cornwall and get around places like Cornwall. That's why this Labour government is investing in every nation and region of the country, and I know she'll look forward to further announcements in the spending review next week.
And that concludes the statement. I will now give a few moments for the front benches to swap over. Minister Hamish Faulkner.
Madam Deputy Speaker,
We are appalled by repeated reports of mass casualty incidents in which Palestinians have been killed when trying to access aid sites in Gaza. Desperate civilians who have endured 20 months of war should never face the risk of death or injury to simply feed themselves and their families.